commenting on the representation of beloved characters turning into something that he doesn't like. My argument is that it's less to do with like it's not necessarily to do with like men can't be represented in this way. Like he has a video where he's like talking about how they're trying to like destroy your heroes or something, right? I think that it is also very much just a byproduct of the fact that they're continuing to use these main actors to the point where they're in their fucking 80s. Like I don't know how else you're gonna fucking write them, right? It's more of an issue that we're trying to squeeze every last fucking piece of meat juice out of their dangles.
You don't think that there's any other way they could write these characters if they're old than humiliating and dragging them down and shitting all over them? There's no other. It's either like, come on.
Okay, so hold on. So there's the example that was talked about before you answered this question was Indiana Jones 5.
Yeah,
that wasn't really the whole movie. That was like the intro to the whole movie. It was literally like this. I don't know if all of you watched it, but he set it up and he was like, "You dang kids," and he just like yelled out the window. The rest of the movie, he was doing shit. Like maybe once he complained about his back or something, but like he was. He wasn't replaced.
He literally didn't. He wanted to fucking die.
He wanted to die. Yeah.
He wanted to die by the end of it.
No. When he talks about wanting to die at the end, he's referring to his current state of life. Like throughout his era in life is that nobody likes him. He has nothing to gain.
He wasn't even necessarily wanting to. I thought he wanted to stay because it's his life's work to have studied that period in time.
So
he was okay with the consequence of dying while he was there, but not necessarily.
If you remember when he returns,
that he would die.
He says like, "Why am I still alive? Who am I alive for?" Like he basically
because he got hurt. Remember?
Yeah, he absolutely wanted to die, and he saw that the fact that he had a bullet wound and he could just watch history unfold is his opportunity to have a death he could actually vaguely enjoy instead of having to be dragged back to life.
I mean,
that was the movie.
It was horrible.
Yeah.
The majority of the movie is not like presenting him as like a piece of shit or anything like that. I don't even know if I'll agree with how we're framing how he's being presented at the beginning and end, but like those are the examples. It's just like
at the beginning
opening of the film and
he's a. Go ahead.
Do you remember how when we get to the school / the university, like his students find him boring and they don't care about the subject at all? That's Indiana Jones.
Seems to care.
Yeah, it's fucking
is that
depressing.
Like a commentary about. Is that that's a very interesting perspective because I don't consider that to be like a condemnation of him as a character. I just consider that as like an attempt at like, I don't know, like comedy or like just him showing how people don't relate to him. Like, I don't know if I agree that it's like a part of a larger cultural issue.
In the first movie, students seemed to really like him. One of his students thought he was hot.
Yeah, he's 80 years old.
Yeah, but this is indicative of like he could command an audience.
Well, so in the third film,
something that he clearly had a passion about.
He has to sneak out of the university because so many people want to ask him questions about his life and stuff.
Yes,
but when he's this age, nobody gives a shit. People aren't even showing up, and they haven't paid attention to the course at all to the point where they don't even know the answers to basic questions.
And even the way he describes the topic is way different than how he describes it in Raiders.
I'll say that like even if I grant you that like his the way he's represented in the film is like insulting to the character. I think it's more of an issue of just like the fact that they're using old people and they're creatively bankrupt and just being like, okay, well, what the fuck do we do with this guy? He's old now, right? Like, how do we incorporate that into the story? You know, they did that in like Uncharted 4. You know, like people didn't really.
Do you remember?
Wait, what do you mean by that?
Much of an issue.
Wait, hold on, what?
Were they? Wasn't he like fucking old and like, I'm too young and old for this shit? Like, yeah, wasn't he?
He's
Am
not
I misremembering it?
He retired for a couple of years.
Okay.
There was not in Uncharted 4. The central conflict didn't have anything to do with him being old. It mainly had to do with the fact that he was bullshitting Elena about like what he wanted from life and lying to her so that he could he could go off with his brother and go on adventures again. Like because he was just too insular, too self-focused, too much of a desire to get the treasure. Even though he said, "Well, I'm trying to help Sam," and it's like. Yeah, I mean, you like this. Don't lie. Don't bullshit. It's not about him being old.
Do you feel like the central conflict of Indiana Jones 5 was about him being old?
It's about the point the
It was
film
about
wants to
him-
make is that he feels like, and he's supported throughout the film, that the world is done with him. He hasn't got anything else to offer. He can go. But by the end, we're supposed to believe through the events that he's got a hell of a lot more to offer, and culturally speaking, he's incredibly important. I think they failed miserably at making that argument.
Yeah, I don't know. I just that wasn't my main takeaway from the film.
Okay,
It was
but
just like a dumb, boring action movie.
correct me if I'm wrong, but did you just say as well that what are they going to do considering how old he is, but also that he's okay throughout most of the movie? He's still doing stuff. He's not pathetic or anything. Like
Exactly. I don't.
Those two positions.
In some sense, it's the worst of both worlds, isn't it? You're simultaneously not recognizing his age while also using his age as a justification for this temperament when there are other possibilities and other options at your disposal.
What I'm saying is that the small amounts of that they included in the film is because they're lazy writers doing the obvious thing of like, well, he's old, I guess we'll make it about him being old. But it even with that considered, it doesn't make up like most of the film, right? It's not. I didn't walk away from that film feeling like that's what it was about, or that's like the message that I was to get from it.
I think even Mangold would tell you that's what the film is about. That, like, the question of what is Indiana Jones to the world.
As like one of the themes in the movie, sure, but like
the primary theme.
Most of it was just dumb action shit.
Okay.
So the extended sequences that are about him talking, doing stuff that aren't the action sequences, like those still exist, and it's a huge part of the film.
They do.
As well, like, there's so many other options everybody has to do with older characters. I would never want to restrict it to the point where it's like, if they're 80, then you're going to have to do a story about how they're too old for this sort of thing. As
they're
opposed
old
to
and sad and nobody likes them and they're alone.
Loads of people recommended, like, he's still able to walk and vaguely run, right? So all you need to do is a Chris Pratt type, a son, anybody. Obviously Short Round was suggested. They come in and they do the adventuring portion. He's always advisor, and you'll get involved here and there with a whip. You'll do this, that, and the other.
Historian,
the theme of like, is he too old for this? What life is worth living? You don't have to have those themes. We can talk. There's so many things people go through when they get older, and it's fucking annoying that every time we do this with like mainstream studio projects from Disney, they're like, what if they wanted to kill themselves?
Yeah. What if they suck?
Here's a question. Is this something that has happened in movies other than the new Indiana Jones and the Last Jedi?
Yes.
Or are those like Blade Runner?
We could.
Example, or?
Well,
I'm not familiar enough with Blade Runner.
I'd have to rewatch the new Blade Runner to get better arguments. I only watched the one time. I didn't like it, but they're kind of. Well, I mean, there's loads of different examples all over the place, right? Obviously, the new James Bond, he wanted to kill himself, essentially, by the end. He did kill himself by the end, technically. Obviously, he was still saving people, but it's like, okay, Nick Fury would be another very recent one.
Can we hold this thought? I'm just going to piss again, but
okay.
I am interested in this conversation, so don't keep playing without me. I'll be back. I guess what I'm this I guess this is a common theme. When I see certain aspects or issues or elements of film, and I guess particularly character writing, criticized in a particular way, that this might just be because of my own bias and the types of media that I consume, but I see it very like heavily correlating, or at least acting in a symbiotic relationship with this whole sort of like idea of this agency over like, we have to make your male characters unrelatable. We have to like disparage them in some sort of way. Like, I think it's less of an issue of like recognizing that that's a thing, and more of an issue with, I guess, trying to have a conversation about like, okay, what is the intent behind that? I don't think it's nefarious, and I think that a lot of these conversations wind up as being like, they're trying to, there's a they, and they're trying to they're trying to make it, they're trying to brainwash you into believing these characters were never good in the first place, which I think is actually very similar to a quote from a Critical Drinker video that I watched. He's saying that they're trying to convince you that those characters were not good in the first place. And I think that's kind of like pushing it in terms of like trying to analyze the intent of the writer there. I think that there's other explanations for that are probably more reasonable. I think that writers can often be lazy. I don't think when we're talking about, you know, beloved characters of a franchise existing and then growing to the actors are 80 years old and we're in the fucking nostalgia generation where they're remaking all these movies and then they do soft reboots and then they want to bring back the old actors because that's the popular thing to do and everybody's doing it. I think it's just lazy writing. I think it's literally just like, oh, what do we do in a way that passes the torch in a lot of these films, sometimes not. Sometimes they try to end it. I don't know exactly what the fuck they were going for in Indiana Jones 5, but in The Last Jedi, they were definitely trying to do a passing the torch thing there. Like, oh, okay, like, you know, this is not the character you should be caring about. I don't know if that's a nefarious way to try and make you hate the character that you grew up with. I don't know if that's necessarily the goal, and I'm not sure I agree that it's as prevalent as Critical Drinker, or perhaps you as well, are making it out to be.
So the desire, as far as I can tell, if it's non-malicious, is a sense of like ego-driven sort of, I'm going to make my mark on the future of this IP, and I'm going to deconstruct. Like, deconstruct is the key word. They want to show you what made this person the way they are in culture, and the good and bad of that, and are they still that person, and what does that person mean to the future. That, I think, as a broad understanding, actually matches a shit ton of the examples. Like, recently with Secret Invasion, they spend a significant amount of time telling us that all of Nick Fury's achievements throughout the MCU were not his. He took them from other people and he claimed responsibility for them. Complete retcon, and it's like, that seems just completely fucked up and changes everything about him. And it's like,
can you say that? Sorry, you need to say what the character did again. I was just hung up on the fact that there's a Marvel show I haven't heard about, and I keep getting introduced to them and realizing that they exist. It's like Secret Invasion. Sorry, I had
they argue that
very secret.
All of his, like, he's supposed to. Nick Fury is the super spy.
Is that the one with the
be,
AI? Intro.
Yeah.
Okay. I've vaguely heard of it.
Nick Fury's known, like, primarily character-wise, being incredibly intelligent, shrewd, and sort of tactical. He's going to be the best. He's like the Batman sort of thing of the MCU. He's going to be able to defeat and plan. He's got nothing to him except his brain and his gun, sort of thing, right? That's the kind of character we got. They managed to maintain that relatively in the MCU, even though he doesn't have a lot of appearances. He's definitely kept up a sense of you're like, he's going to be impressive, whatever he ends up doing. In the new show, they argue a group of aliens needed a place to stay on Earth. They were literally like desperate. And he basically said to them, I'll figure out a home for you if you do secret agent stuff for me. And that involves collecting dirt on allies to leverage them, defeating people, maybe even doing hits, sort of thing, and getting information on different enemy squads. He got all of that, and he rose through all of the ranks until he reached the position we meet him in like Iron Man. And they have an explicit speech from one of the characters saying, like, you motherfucker, you took credit for everything we did. Don't try and rewrite history. That sort of thing. And it's just another one that fits the mold of, like, holy fuck, what's the goal here? You've completely rewritten all of his actions to now making him a completely different character. It's like,
I think that it's just bad writing and idiots that are chosen for writing projects not based on their talent, but just nepotism and industry shoulder rubbing and shit. I think I honestly think that that's just most of it. Is just like I would like to think that writers wouldn't be so clueless to not understand how an audience would like to see their favorite characters being treated. But fuck it, like, here's an example. Did you watch Glass? Like, that's M. Night. M. Night wrote those characters, and that is I could not think of a more unceremonious way to end those characters' stories.
I completely agree.
That entire fucking thing is bullshit. Like, you watch that and you think, did you even care about these characters? Like, and that's coming from the guy that wrote them. I think that we shouldn't be so naive as to think that it can't just be because there's a lot of writers that are just really bad and not necessarily, like, sure, I think subconsciously, maybe statistically, there could be a higher, some amount of it being like politically motivated or, maybe ideologically motivated. But I just don't think that that's the answer. And I think when we're talking about film, even just mainstream film. I think it's a bit more nuanced than that.
I'm happy to. I would completely agree that incompetence is absolutely a part of all of these, no matter what. If we find other motivations as well as other influences, that incompetence will always be a part of it. But like when approaching an Indiana Jones 5, I imagine they sat around thinking like, what should we make this film about? And someone settled on the idea of like, okay, so we'll start with like, he's going to be we'll bring him down. He's going to have a couple things going wrong. And by the end of the movie, he's going to find like a new lease on life, and it'll end on a really happy note that Indiana Jones is always going to be needed and necessary, and he'll even pick up his hat to let the audience know, you know what, he's still out there doing his adventures. It's like, okay. And then the incompetence set in, and the deconstruction angle of like trying to get more commentary on different things he did in the original films with a new perspective on it, so to speak, and it ends up crashing and burning horrifically, and it matches a set, unfortunately, that I wish would fucking go away. Because it's interesting you said about the 80 years old. I think Christopher Lee was around 80 when he did Count Dooku, right? It's like, you know, I'm not saying the prequels are amazing. I'm just saying that what do they do with him?
I'll do one even more recent, right? They brought Christopher Lee back for the Hobbit trilogy, and you know the movies aren't good, but you know they
were way worse on a second watch. Holy shit!
They definitely get worse on rewatches.
I think that's my highest rating jump. From a 5 to a 1.
Oh, whoa!
To a 1? Whoa! Calm down. Like they're better than Dial. They're way better than Dial of Destiny.
No, the third Hobbit movie, Battle of the Five Armies.
That one's pretty bad. Yeah.
It's the worst.
Most disrespectful use of my time ever.
Most disrespectful use of my time. Oh, have you not reviewed? Have you got videos on these?
I'd way rather watch that than like Dial of Destiny.
I had the video of me seeing it in theaters where I was way overly charitable about it.
Wow.
And also, the second time I watched it was the extended edition, which was just the most cancerous fucking thing.
Well, the Battle of Five Armies extended edition is the only Lord of the Rings movie that has an R rating.
My God.
Which is funny.
Fun fact.
Which is funny, but then you watch the extended edition of those movies and you're like, what the fuck? So... That was bit of a tonal thing. But what I would say, even though that trilogy is not good, there are legitimately good parts of those movies. Even the third one has legitimately good things in it. I don't know what I could say is good about Dial of Destiny.
It could have been worse.
Well, and I thought you were going to say
could have been worse.
You were going with like how they treated Christopher Lee, despite the fact that was one of his few remaining acting roles, I think, before he was unable to act anymore. And that's, you know, significantly worse than Harrison Ford, who was still able to run around and shout and do all kinds of things. It's just a suggestion that they never had to go down these routes, but they often do with a lot of the most beloved characters of all time culturally, like Luke Skywalker, like Han Solo, like Indiana Jones. Why?
How many
stop?
Examples are there, though? Like,
how many would you need
3 or 4, right?
to concede that it's a pattern?
Whether or not it's a recognizable pattern in the sense that you can point out for however many examples in the past. When did Last Jedi come out? 2017?
Yeah.
Or something? Right?
Yes,
We're talking about the past like 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to see more of those examples in this generation simply because we are in the generation of nostalgia bullshit where previous generations of movies didn't bring back old characters, right? They didn't this wasn't really as much of a thing in previous generations of movies. So,
but considering how often they fumble it, like to where it's a bizarre consistency with how badly they do it.
But don't we have comparisons to make, though?
I don't know if I would say it's a consistency.
But the previous generation of bringing Indiana Jones back didn't do this to him. Like Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Yeah, but he wasn't that old. And
age doesn't have anything to do with it. Age doesn't have anything to do with it.
They did try to set it up.
He was older than...
They did try to set it up so that Shia LaBeouf would take over it.
Yeah, but they also ended it with him saying no. They took the hat off him.
Well,
remember at the end of Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, he married to Marion. He, was happy. They kind of left him on a high note.
Yeah, and it was the end.
Regardless of whether or not there's some examples of...
He was 66, by the way, filming that.
Old people being brought back in the 90s, early 2000s, or whatever, right? Like, I'm not saying it never happened, but we are in the generation of it happening consistently, of there being old IPs that are revived, revamped, soft reboots, whatever. Bring back the old characters. The fact that this is constantly happening and is constantly a thing that is happening means that it's going to be more likely that we're going to see those characters disrespected and mishandled. I don't think that it's necessarily like the goal to do that. I think that it's just like a byproduct of us having these movies in this generation anyway, and the writing just being bad. Like, we brought up Blade Runner 2049, which was kind of like a passing the torch sort of thing, and Harrison Ford is like, well, did you watch?
I've seen
did
it,
you guys
but
say
not
that
since
you
it
didn't
came
watch
out,
When it
and I'm
came
not a
out.
fan.
Not a fan. Yeah, I think I remember having a conversation about this on your thing a while ago. But
Mhm.
I really love that movie, and I don't know, like, I don't know if I could watch that and attribute it as like we're supposed to not like this character anymore because they're old and because they're, disheveled.
Well, I don't know
And
based off
I
of
I
that
feel
movie.
here's the thing. I just watched The Lorax, which was a very bad movie. And within the movie, within the singular title, there's a character who grows old and is like, I can't do anything anymore. Like, I just think that's such a trope already that just writers who are a bunch of Nepo babies in their 20s and 30s just don't know what old people are like. And so they just have to write them in this, like, like, I'm old.
Okay, but what about
Like,
the
what
ones
else?
that
I think it's
are
just a lack of
successful?
creativity.
What about the ones that don't choose
Which
that
ones that are
direction and the ones
successful?
that people like? So we could go with like Logan would be one, right? That film's a deconstruction of Wolverine, but people really like it, and it doesn't.
Yeah, he's old.
Yeah, I'm saying people
Again,
liked
it's
it.
like the obvious. Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
what do you
but I'm
mean?
saying that the direction for the character to go and the types of ideas that they at least feel compelled to bring up as part of the themes of the character
Oh,
is
okay,
just
no.
the most
So I'm
obvious
not.
shit. They're like, oh, the actor's old.
I
The
thought this was a
character's old, so
given.
we
I'm
gotta...
I'm saying that throughout Logan, he's not like pathetic. He's not being told by all of the characters that he's worthless, sort of thing. And he doesn't want to like give up on people or whatever. The deconstruction is what does Wolverine represent?
I think that we hold different values in terms of the social standings or how beloved characters are treated, because I don't see those things as too different personally, because I don't really feel generally like attached to any of those characters in like a nostalgic way. But like, even I'm trying to think of a good example of something where I could feel that same way. I just
But like, you could
I'll have to
imagine what
think
it
about
would
it.
be to not want to see these
Well, I mean,
characters constantly
you mentioned
disrespected.
Glass, like that is
I-
close to it, right? I assume.
Well, yeah, it's like entirely unceremonious, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't watch that and think that they're trying to make me feel disrespected by doing that. I watch that and think, wow, M. Night's fucking stupid.
Yeah, no, but
like that's my
I
takeaway is not like
what he did to those two characters
the
is
narrative
so
of
beyond
like,
fucked up,
intent.
and I completely agree with you. And that if it were like if M. Night had quotes related to, well, I wanted to do it to show people that the characters are blah blah blah, like these things are going to play into it as well, right? Like what the creators have to say about these sorts of things, what ideas they're trying to represent. This whole era of it, there are legacy characters that do return as anomalies that are treated well. Logan was one I was trying to bring up, that people felt like Logan was respected in that film, but like Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. They could have brought him in as a depressed, disheveled, sad Peter Parker who's lost the will to live, but they didn't. They made him the mentor.
Here's what I was trying to say earlier. I feel like even if they did do that with Peter Parker Spider-Man, which I love, I wouldn't feel like personally slighted by that in any way.
It would depend for me on
and
execution.
I didn't feel that way in Glass either. I just felt like, wow, this is bad writing, right? I didn't feel like I feel like a lot of people very much kind of attach their identities to these characters in ways, and I feel like it can feel like that's an interesting sentence. I feel like it can feel like to a lot of people that their experience is being like diminished by having these characters being less respected in a piece of media, whereas like I'm so detached from these characters, like even characters that I love, like I feel like this might be pointing towards like more of like a generational sort of like parasocial experience with media, right?
I feel like it's perfectly
Does that make
reasonable
sense?
to be upset when characters that inspired you are like shat on. I wouldn't call it. I don't think I'd describe it as parasocial compared to like any mentor in life.
I get what you're saying. I don't hold that much of an emotional stake in even my favorite characters, being shat on in later incantations of media or anything. Like I've said this a million times. People can talk about my favorite movies of all time and say that they're shit. I don't care, right? Like it doesn't really matter. Like I care about my own experience with it. But yeah, I think that I think we're kind of getting at this here is that I think there's a lot of people that relate so closely to these characters and hold them in such a special place in their heart. And I'm not trying to say this in an insulting way, but just in a way where I'm trying to understand the perspective here. I think that there's a lot of people that hold these characters to such an important place in their heart that they feel slighted by how they're represented in media, which is interesting to me because I personally just don't feel that way. But now I feel like I'm understanding more about these people anyway.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Sure. The core of this being that you were like, I'm trying to get back to the video in some way. I think was it Drinker brought this up as
sure
with Indiana Jones and Star Wars, and you said, is it even happening outside of them? And do you feel as though that's been answered?
Say that one more time.
So Drinker mentioned Indiana Jones and Star Wars is obviously included, and then you said, is it even happening outside of them? Do you feel you still want examples, or?
I mean, I've been given examples. I don't know to what degree I would consider it to be like
valid,
a cultural issue.
Okay,
is I guess what I'm trying to say.
Obviously,
it can be a trend that you're noticing. Like sometimes I'll see trends that I notice in movies where it's like only 4 movies have done it, but I watch enough movies where I'm like aware of like the inspirations of enough movies where I'm like, okay, I see what's starting to happen here. Or like trailerisms,
Yeah.
Or like when the Inception bwom happened, like right after District 9, I was like, this is becoming a thing. That was the second time it happened, and then it became a huge thing, right? Like I get that you can notice trends, but like
if there were 5 writers,
it's again.
Just real quick, if there were 5 writers, one of them did it maliciously, one of them did it because he just was skipping through a bunch of character arcs and he landed on old equals, wants to die. Third one did it because they love the character and they feel like it's perfectly representative of where they'd go next. That's kind of like Rian Johnson with Luke Skywalker. He felt that was the thing to do. And the fourth guy is like, oh, well, I love it when characters do this, just in general, so I just want to make this character do it. And then the fifth guy literally didn't even write it. It was AI. It was just that. But if all 5 happen at the same time, it's almost impossible not to see it as a pattern. I would imagine that's fair, even if we don't fully understand the motivations for everybody.
Sure. So pattern recognition is subjective, and I will give that. Yes, you can see that as a pattern. I will say that is a noticeable pattern that one can notice. My issue, I guess perhaps I'm incorrectly attributing this, but my issue is with it being framed as kind of like a cultural problem, which is kind of what seems to be the takeaway in this interview, right?
For me, and I imagine possibly for Fringy and Rags, I'm not 100% sure, we tend to draw all of it back to incompetence, because you can almost do anything that people might hate on paper well, and so deconstructing all of these characters, even if that was their goal, which I'm not necessarily saying it is, at the core of it all, it can always be attributed to their ineptitude and watching them struggle to try and make whatever point they wanted to make. Like, people are like outraged that Nick Fury has an arc in that season about overcoming his like bigotry towards aliens as a black man in the show, which is pissing everybody off. And it's just like, yeah, the director was probably like, well, I'm trying to make a point about how racism is bad, and it's like, yeah, and you've made it in one of the most like awkward and dumbassery ways ever. The incompetence can often explain almost everything, but it doesn't change the fact that I wish there was more like, I think competence does breed respect for like a character you're dealing with.
Do you feel like there's any relation between like taking an issue with how beloved characters are treated in later versions of the franchise versus like talking about how, let's say, like men are treated in film, or like how male characters are written? Like, do you feel like that's kind of like in the same vein?
I don't think so. Because you could theoretically have Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't see why they would be. No, I don't think there's any real connection between the two, other than maybe the people who noticed one also noticed the other.
Yeah, I feel like I'm just trying to be I'm trying to be fair in the sense that like I'm not really the type of person to like care too much about like seeing how I'm represented in a film or like seeing how a particular race or gender, like when I'm arguing about like women in film, like I'm more or less just saying like here's what people who are trying to make that change are at least saying, right? Here's their argument and like at least engage with it, right? I don't really care either way in terms of the particular demographics, I don't think, but um I don't know. I feel like a lot of the conversation surrounding like culture and injecting that into film is just so not what I care about in terms of why I love film, right? I love film for the craftsmanship. The craftsmanship. I love film for the the directing, the meticulous elements, the details,
because I feel like we're similar. We're on adjacent roads because when these sorts of things happen, it's like the rewrites or a lot of the time, like take Black Widow for example. She was very specifically characterized, start, middle, end in the MCU, and is dead. Her primary characteristic is that she wanted a family. She got taken away from hers. The newest version of her, they invent a history where she had a family that she completely ditched and then forgot she kind of had, and then reconnected during the events of another MCU film. It was like,
what is the newest version of her?
Black Widow, the film. It was a.
Is it the? Oh God, I didn't even know that got released. That's so
it's
funny.
not good. Point being, they probably thought, well, she cares about family. We'll make stories about that, and then they end up accidentally fucking assassinating her because they gave her a bunch of things that she would never have done if those are the values she had. So I'm sitting there frustrated that they've ruined the character, but also like a fundamental appeal to the artistic merits of storytelling. You've completely fucked it. Like you have to respect what they are, who they are, and what actions they would take. So like it's like two prongs, so to speak. Like my investment in the art form and my investment in the character for how much they may or may not mean to me.
Okay. What do you mean? What are you expecting?
Use that as an excuse to say, hey, they were never that good in the first place. And then what they'll do is
What? When was this published? This was after the new Indiana Jones, right? Yeah, I didn't get that takeaway, but we've already discussed it.
Yeah.
Right? Let's see. Yeah, that was released June 30th. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, I don't think that the new Indiana Jones movie or like a lot of these movies were saying these characters were never that good in the first place. Like, you're reaching super hard when.
Like I said, that one I gave you about.
Even if we say that they're disrespected there, like the takeaway of them, the implied takeaway of they weren't that good in the first place, I feel like that's a stretch, even if
do you remember
to agree that
the Nick Fury example I just gave you, wouldn't that would encompass that, right? They literally rewrote his history to be shitter than it used to be.
I guess so.
I know you're not as familiar with
a lot of stuff I don't watch and don't care.
But like, this is what Drink is referencing. This is what's on his mind.
I know, and this is where the disconnect comes from. And this is what we're learning about each other.
Replacement who is stronger than them, smarter than them, more capable than them, doesn't have any other weaknesses, and it's like they're trying to.
Okay, he's coming at this from a very Star Wars based perspective, which I'm sorry, people who really care about film and people who really care about diversity of film, not diversity of races or genders, but diversity of like film, like the actual film diet that you could consume. Most people aren't thinking about Star Wars, but it's clear that you're just thinking about Star Wars, right? Like, what you're describing is Star Wars. It's one movie.
So he's talking about a couple of games, a few series. Obviously, all of them are mainstream, but they're nonetheless valid, especially in the context of mainstream.
Movie.
Say, hey, see this guy that you really liked?
Also, it happened in Star Wars multiple times. So, not just one movie.
Talking about Luke Skywalker.
Yeah. Did you see what they did to Obi-Wan?
I watched them, but they just like.
Yeah, they did the Han Solo.
And then
the Han Solo movie.
No, Han Solo and The Force Awakens.
Oh.
I think you like. Do you like Force Awakens? I can't remember.
When it came out, I was like impressed by the practical effects.
Yeah.
I wasn't as jaded by the paint by numbers recreation of episode 4 that would soon become the standard of what soft reboots would become. So my rating has changed since I've seen it. But I had a positive review when it came out because I was like, oh, this is fine. Let's see where it goes. And then not only did that become like, wind up being just some of the most annoying, tropey, obvious bullshit ever over time, but what the series ultimately leads to detracts from the original movie for sure, right? Like, what
I agree.
If that's where you're going, you didn't even have a plan. You have two directors fucking arguing with each other about what the movies are. Like, go fuck yourself.
Well, and for the record, I enjoyed The Force Awakens when I first saw it, but
yeah,
when time went on, it crumbled apart.
Yeah.
What other movie could you possibly be talking about right now?
Well, we've got a new and improved version here, so you have to like them even more now. Of course you do, because that's how
You're talking about Luke Skywalker. What other movie could you possibly be talking about where it's like, oh yeah, we've created a new female character, and not only have we replaced...
So about this, like, are you familiar with the MCU's... it's very odd. Like, in Phase 4 and 5, we've had a, like... What is, I don't even know what the actual number would be, but to not exaggerate, it's like a 300% increase in female characters, which isn't a problem in and of itself, but when they're all written like shit, and a lot of them will...
all written like shit.
A lot of them will introduce themselves in comparison with the established male version of whatever character it is. So, with Thor, we had girl Thor. With Ant-Man, you have his daughter in Quantumania, even though we already had Wasp, so I don't know, whatever. Black Widow, even Black Widow, her sister is introduced as the replacement Black Widow, and she is a lot better than Black Widow. She didn't make Black Widow's mistakes. Loki, Sylvie is the girl counterpart to him, and she, like, it's better than him in every single way. It's embarrassing and weird. Obviously, I assume you've heard about Hulk and She-Hulk. Some of the most famous clips from her explaining her trauma is more something that she's dealt with than he has.
I'm definitely aware of it and actively avoided it. Yes.
Yeah. And then like Doctor Strange, you got America is sort of taken over as she's the one that takes the final actions.
Annoying.
She was annoying, and it's unfortunate because
what's her name, America or what
yeah, Chavez. And they don't give her
America Chavez. Yeah.
They don't give her character. They just give her she is girl who by the end of the film she's scared, and then he says you can do it, and then she does it. She had it all along.
Asshole girl who,
and so many of these fucking characters' arcs are they had it all along instead of actually having to like fight for it. Ridiculous.
Or struggle to get their powers.
Would you say that because of how Marvel writes its female characters, that the Marvel Cinematic Universe is sexist against women?
Yes.
I think you could unironically make a pretty you could.
I would agree.
It's really kind of shit because the MCU had good female characters and it invented shit new ones or it ruined the good ones that we had to the point where I'm struggling to think what good female characters we have left.
Why don't you just knock female out of that? What good characters do we have left?
What good characters, period. But to be topical, I'm trying to think of, who are the non-shit female characters we've got.
I know. Cosmo.
Oh, Cosmo. Yeah, that's true. Cosmo's great. I like Cosmo.
There you go.
So, are we in agreement that the Sony Marvel is doing better than Marvel right now?
You mean Venom 2, Morbius, and like I don't know.
Spider-Verse.
Oh yeah, okay. That's yes. I'm gonna say yes. I'm gonna because you got that, and then you got technically No Way Home belongs more so to Sony than it does Marvel, right? So. And that was like a far more redeemable entry in Phase 4 and 5. But yeah, I guess I would concede that, yeah.
Isn't that funny?
It is kind of.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it is...
Yeah, who thought that we would get there?
Well, is it more or less funny than DreamWorks taking over Pixar in terms of
I was just about to say that,
content?
Damn. I mean, I was hating Pixar before it was cool. So...
Where did you start hating Pixar? Which movie?
Toy Story 3.
Ooh, interesting choice.
A little earlier than most.
Yeah. Well,
them with a female, but we're gonna say that the old male version is bad. What other movie could you possibly? Can I get some suggestions in the chat? I don't want to just be like talking out my ass from my limited perspective of like me watching art house movies, and like me watching some Marvel movies and some Star Wars movies. Like, he's talking about this as if this is like mainstream. This is what every movie is doing, and he's literally just talking about Star Wars, right? Is this not what's happening? Like, he's literally only talking about Star Wars here, and he's not saying it.
Attacking and deconstructing the archetypes that they resent but rely on. Is that a good bit of made-up analysis?
What they want to do is use
please, somebody prove me wrong.
New characters, but it's like trying to take a character that you've bonded with over a period of years, if not decades, like you grew up with and stuff. Like Indiana Jones being a great example, or Luke Skywalker, for example. Characters that you've really come to know and love.
He says, for example,
present them as old,
but he's only talking about that, right?
Men who are.
Well, he's not talking about Star Wars. He's talking about Indiana Jones.
And he's, as we've said, there's loads. Drinker would give you a list if you really wanted them.
And lonely, they've given up on life, they're broken down, and they're kind of pathetic now, and they use that as an excuse to say, hey, they were never that good in the first place. And then what they'll do is they'll bring in a new, diverse female replacement who is stronger than them.
Like, did you watch not Genesis, Dark Fate? Terminator?
Hell no.
So, do you know,
No.
like, Dark Fate opens with another Arnie getting sent back, and he just shotguns John Connor to death.
Man,
And then
every time you guys talk, and I'm sorry to interrupt. Every time you guys talk about a movie that you've seen that I haven't seen that you're like ruined your life, I just feel bad.
it's not. No. This is. I want to make
these
you.
all sound awful. Like, I feel like I'm making the right decisions by just not considering them things
like,
that I have to watch.
the more
I feel
like,
like I'm just doing a good job. You know, like
the reason it came to my head is because of what
I feel are going to be good.
It's because of what Drinker just said. I feel like if I just say this to you, it'll make you laugh, right? So.
Damn,
I
couldn't
the
imagine
thing. New
thinking that
Terminator
I would want to watch that movie.
New Terminator, big budget. Oh my god, James Cameron approves of it. Here we go. So exciting. Opens up, John Connor is immediately killed, and then in the future, Sarah Connor has to defend a new girl who is apparently going to be the one to hold, to carry the new savior of humanity. Because yes, Skynet was defeated. Unfortunately, in the ruins of Skynet, Legion rises up, which is another self-aware AI that's going to take over the world with robots and nukes. And then at the end of the film, they're like, actually, you're not going to have a kid or a son or a girl or whatever that's going to lead the world. You're going to lead it, because and they make this like big thing about how Sarah Connor kind of hates that she wasn't valued as an individual, but instead the carrier of John Connor, which is, it's just like, did you surgically do this? Why the hell did you write all of that way? That sounds like the most annoying and lame thing you could give Terminator fans.
So they're like kind of like disparaging the Sarah Connor character.
What I'm getting at is like they actually assassinate literally Mr. Connor, and then they make her completely alternate to what her character would be. They erase and undo like Skynet, but then they replace it with something called Legion that's exactly the fucking same. It's like the worst thing ever. And it's like, why? Why did you do all of this? You told the same story, much worse, but with a girl instead of a guy. What's the idea? What are you doing?
I think that a lot of the motivations when it comes to these terrible writing decisions are based on them thinking that they're going to have a successful film that they can make into a franchise, right? Like The Mummy was supposed to be the start of the Dark Universe. Perhaps if the new Bill and Ted were even more massively successful, then we would have those two other characters continuing to make films right now or whatever. I think that a lot of the bad writing comes from them preemptively trying to set things up and being like, well, yeah, why would we care about the old characters? Because we're trying to start this new shit. And the writers are just so stupid and ignorant about why anybody would want to see these old characters presented positively, right? So, yeah. Again, I think I'll concede on it being a thing that happens, but the intention is what I take issue with.
Okay.
Smarter than them, more capable than them, doesn't have any other weaknesses, and it's like they're trying to say, hey, see this guy that you really liked? Well, we've got a new and improved version here, so you have to like them even more now.
You say Luke Skywalker as an example. What's any other example?
Of course you do, because that's how human emotions work. No, it's not. People don't think that way. And so the more you try and slot these like fake pod people replacements in to like supplement these classic characters that we loved, the more people reject it. And that's why Indiana Jones is fucking tanking at the box office.
Did Indiana Jones do that? Like, it kept the same main character. It didn't replace it with a female character and say, Indiana Jones is bad.
I don't know if you're aware, but Kathleen Kennedy talked about how Helena Shaw could very well take over for the franchise at this point as a replacement Indiana Jones in her own franchise, but obviously that's not going to happen now because the film tanked.
Yeah, it was weird because like even I don't even know if I would argue that the film itself implied that, right? Like the only reason we're saying that is because Kathleen Kennedy's saying that, right?
No, that's to confirm that was a goal. There was a passing of the torch element to it, right? She's friends with basically everybody. She pulls,
though, right?
Yeah, if they were going to make another movie, like if Dial of Destiny did well, then I don't think that we'd see Harrison Ford in it. It would be Helena Shaw taking over.
Which is probably like how well did Crystal Skull do? Right? Was that
made
like,
a lot of money? It was very financially successful. Yeah, made like $800 million.
Damn.
Yeah, this one made half that, and it cost
this
more.
This one, I think. Yeah, I think in order
to where it's at right now, and
in order to break even, I think it had to make just shy of $600 million. So
and even then, that ain't great when you spend $300 million to get $600 million.
I think it's safe to say that we will probably not see another Indiana Jones movie, if ever, in
hopefully.
Okay. Somebody clip it. Rag said,
I will.
Wait. You don't even know your clip. Rag said we will probably not see.
Oh,
we will probably not see. Absolutely.
Got him. Exposed.
Nazi.
You did it. It came out. It's a Freudian slip.
EFAP will probably not see.
We'll never recover.
And probably. You literally had this entire tirade saying like, hey, they're trying to do this thing where like they're replacing it with women characters and saying that the male characters are bad. This is why Indiana Jones is tanking at the box office. Indiana Jones didn't do that.
This movie cost $300 million to make.
There's a plethora of reasons why that movie tanked. So much stuff to talk about in terms of like time of release, the choice of story to tell, the way it was marketed, the
de-aging, and how boring it was. It's so boring.
It needs to make like $900 million to break even.
Hello, you just listened to a segment of the podcast Every Frame a Pause, or EFAP. Hosted by YouTubers Mauler, Rags, and Fringy, and joined by a cycling variety of guests across the internet, they critically analyze media with exhaustive detail while pausing at every single frame. Subscribe to the EFAP channel and catch new episodes on Saturdays, as well as catch their smaller videos reacting to the latest and not-so-greatest movies and TV shows throughout the week. You can also subscribe here to EFAP highlights for the latest shorts, clips, and supercuts, also uploaded throughout the week. Links to all the relevant channels can be found in the description section below, as well as links to their communities on Reddit and Discord. Thanks for watching.